Last time up, Sandberg homered to tie it at 9 in the 9th. He's the tying run at the plate now in the 10th. He hits it to deep left center. Look out! Do you believe it? It's gone!
National Broadcasting Company, now in its 7th decade of bringing you baseball's memories. Baseball's milestones. Baseball's majesty. And baseball's magical moments. NBC Sports proudly presents the Major League Baseball Game of the Week. Today from the Astrodome, it's the Chicago Cubs versus the Houston Astros. The Game of the Week is brought to you by Miller Genuine Draft, cold filtered draft beer. It's as real as it gets. By AT&T, the right choice. By YouGo. Buy yourself a little freedom and see how it feels to have your own set of wheels. And by Quaker State Motor Oil. When car-caring people reach for the best, they reach for Quaker State Motor Oil.
The Chicago Cubs come into the Astrodome in a virtual tie for first place in the National League East. The Cardinals lead them by percentage points. In the West, the Astros trail the Reds by 2.5. Hi, everybody. Bob Costas with Tony Kubek. Welcome to the first half of an NBC Sports baseball doubleheader. In Chicago these days, they're talking about Dawson and Durham, calling them death and destruction. But almost as important to the Cubs' chances, the performance of their own version of the M&M boys, a couple of young pitchers. Greg Maddux, 21-year-old right-hander who won here last night, and lefty Jamie Moyer, who gets the start this afternoon. Moyer flirted with a no-hitter earlier this year at Philadelphia, getting to the 9th before Juan Samuel got a hit. His opponent today has pitched a record 5 no-hitters. Nolan Ryan, the starter for the Astros, is 2-2 so far this season. Speaking of Houston, let's go down to the field and Tony.
All right, Bob, thank you very much. When you want to get to the liveliest topics in baseball these days, who else do you go to but a catcher, Alan Ashby? And Alan, there have been accusations thrown around by a lot of people about scuffing of baseballs. Is the bat lively? Another topic of discussion. Are the bats corked? From a viewpoint of a catcher, is there scuffing of baseballs going on?
Well, I'll tell you, Tony, I don't know about that sort of thing. If it's being done, it may be somebody other than the pitcher out there. We've had a lot of accusations flying around about our ball club with, Mike Scott, Nolan Ryan, some of the people that we've put out on the mound. I think the point from our point of view is we've got some guys out there with great stuff. We go to other ballparks around the league, and the balls come flying off the backstop screen. No telling what happens to a baseball, and managers start saying they've got balls with marks on it. I think the real point is the umpires have checked over and over, and you've got some real established umpires that say every ball has been clean, and they've shown them right in front of the hitters. And I think it's awfully tough to discriminate against our pitchers alone on that basis.
Livelier baseball or corked bats, any credence to those two thoughts?
Well, I don't know. I heard that the dead ball era went out the year that Maris and Mantle hit 61 and 54 home runs, and I think you hit a few that year probably also. There are a lot of home runs flying out of the ballpark right now, but I think when you start looking at an Eric Davis, Daniels, and some of the guys they've got over there with Cincinnati, you start seeing some of the reasons some of these young guys are really hitting their home runs. There's some tremendous power, some tremendous young players coming on the scene. I hope the home run totals go down a little bit. I haven't done anything to make people think the ball's jacked up, though.
The words of an honest man, catcher Alan Ashby. We'll be back to the Astrodome in Houston with the starting lineups right after this.
40-year-old Nolan Ryan still might be the hardest thrower in the majors, and he's always dominated the Cubs. 14-3 lifetime against them. ERA 2.38 faces this lineup. Sandberg, the sizzling Mumphrey, Dawson and Durham, death and destruction as they've come to be known around the Windy City, Moreland, Dunston, Sundberg, Martinez, and the pitcher Moyer.
all Nolan Ryan's done in the last 10 years, Bob, is dropped from about 101 miles per hour to an occasional 97 miles per hour during the course of a game. He's come up with a good changeup also.
Fastball for a called strike. Paul Runge, the plate umpire. Joe West at first. Randy Marsh at second. Bob Engel at third. Threw it by him. This is the only park where Ryne Sandberg has not homered in the National League.
Aside from Jerry Mumphrey, who of course played for the Astros at one time, there are not many Cubs that hit well in the atmosphere of this dome. But the lighting is not quite as good as natural lighting at daytime in Chicago. Bobby, about 30 minutes before this ball game, a member of the Chicago Cubs went into the umpire's room beneath the stands of the bowels of the Astrodome here and talked to the umpires about the possibility of Nolan Ryan doctoring pitches and scuffing the baseball. So they've alerted the umpires.
Breaking ball up and in, 1-2. Well, wasn't it Chuck Tanner who collected baseballs on Ryan? We've heard all the talk about Scott, but Tanner supposedly had 18 baseballs he felt were evidence that Ryan is doing it too.
He and Bruce Sutter sat on the bench and cataloged those that were scuffed supposedly in the same spot. Easier in the home team park, of course. Gene Michael, John Vukovic, the coaching staff there, will not have access to the baseballs thrown out. They're thrown to the visitors' dugout or the home team dugout. So Gene Michael is aware of what happened down in Atlanta.
The count goes full to Sandberg. 3-2 is the count. I asked Sandberg if he'd had any success against Ryan. He said some, but almost always at Wrigley rather than here. You know about the tough dimensions for a hitter at the Astrodome, but the mound is also excellent. Pitchers are comfortable with it. Check swing foul might have been ball 4, and as you mentioned, Tony, the visibility here is very tough on a hitter, making it ideal for a power pitcher like Ryan these many years.
Well, Ryan, a beautiful crowd. Here at the Astrodome in 7 career starts versus the Cubs has an ERA of ½ a run per game. I'll show you. I mean, his ERA normally, this is around 3, just below that against the Cubs, but here it is exceptional.
And he gets Sandberg to start the game.
The last pitch, we've got a Pittsburgh Pirates scout, Dom Scala, with a radar gun. This last pitch was clocked at 93. Earlier in the count, Nolan Ryan threw a pitch out of the strike zone, 97. Now, this is the gun, the radar gun, that registers. There's Dom Scala, former with the Yankees, now with the Pittsburgh Pirates, advanced scouting. He's been signaling to us. That is the faster of the 2 guns. It registers 3 to 5 miles per hour faster than what they call the Decatur gun.
Sandberg struck out 3 times last night. Here it is, day game after a night game, and he's got to face Ryan. That's an uncomfortable feeling. So Sandberg's already on the bench with Ryan's first K today, the 4,332nd of his career, and now the count 0-2 to Mumphrey, who is 17 for 33 for the year, batting .515. And he's always liked to hit. Unlike most hitters, he's liked to hit here in the Astrodome, both as a member of the Astros and as a visitor. He's a .328 lifetime hitter in this park. The 1-2. He didn't go.
Looked like a changeup. Nolan Ryan's changeup is at about 84 miles an hour. That is about perhaps a little bit slower than the average Major League fastball, and that's his changeup. He throws what they call the circle change. Put your thumb and index finger together like a circle.
Got him.
There's the fastball up and in. Ryan has learned to spot that fastball, especially when he's ahead in the count. He wanted to get this ball in the kitchen, up and into Mumphrey, and he did just that. Settled up beautifully with a pitch before that, which was the changeup away. And then he says, I'm going to dart one in on you, up and in. And he hits Alan Ashby's target. You imagine what Nolan Ryan might have been if he'd had this control in the first 10 or 15 years of his career, like Clemens already has and Gooden has in the prime of his career.
Curveball low to the Hawk. In addition to being the all-time strikeout leader, he's also walked more hitters than any pitcher in the history of the game. Almost 2,300. You figure the length of his career, all the strikeouts and walks, and in many cases going deep in the count as batters swing and miss. It's a safe statement that this guy has thrown more pitches in Major League games than anyone in history. Maybe not more pitches anywhere if you count a guy like Satchel Paige, but in the majors, this guy has probably let fly more than anyone.
People forget about his outstanding curveball. .95-mile-an-hour fastball, again up and into Andre Dawson, the man who's become a presence in this Cubs lineup. When Dallas Green went out and got that attractive deal that he could not turn down, where Dick Moss and Andre Dawson came out to Arizona and said, here's a contract, you fill in the numbers. May have been the best deal ever made.
In the dirt, 2-2. Ryan averaged almost 10 strikeouts per 9 innings pitched a year ago. He strikes out the side to start this one.
Andre Dawson stares out at Ryan, saying, what in the world was that? I would doubt that there's ever been a pitcher in the history of baseball who struck out the side more times than Nolan Ryan, as he just did. What do you suspect if he is doctoring the baseball? The alleged charges: touch the bill of the cap, the hair. This pitch goes down hellaciously, and Andre Dawson had a long stare at Nolan Ryan after that.
Ball one from Moyer to Hatcher, who's among the league leaders at .336, also has 3 homers, and he's third in the league behind Vince Coleman and Eric Davis in steals with 13.
He got hit on the left hand by Maddox yesterday, and luckily it didn't hit the wrist on the meat part near the palm. He is sore, but he wants to play. That's a good Dick Wagner deal. You can see he's just clenching his left hand right there, Bob. It's pretty sore, and he got some treatment this morning.
Hatcher, of course, was originally Cub property. Came to Houston in the deal that sent Mumphrey to Chicago. 1-2 pitch. Fastball, which when Moyer has it going, he'll get up around 86, 87, but he is not a power pitcher. Has a good straight change, and they're trying to get him to throw his curveball harder to complement that.
There's the great straight change. Again, like Nolan Ryan, it is what they call a circle change. It looks like a screwball at times. Doyle Alexander throws one like this. Don Sutton throws one like this. Andy Messerschmidt threw one like this. It's been very effective. Sometimes you get the screwball-like action.
Ryan struck out the side in the top half. Hatcher fans against Moyer to start the bottom half of the first. And here's Doran. Astro lineup: Hatcher, Doran, Garner at third, Glenn Davis at first, the cleanup man, Kevin Bass, Jose Cruz, Alan Ashby, Dickie Thon at short today, and of course Ryan. First chance for a fielder. Dunston had to back up, but has time and gets him.
This Cubs team defensively has probably improved in about 5 different areas. Right there is one, and as he gets the high hop off the turf and has to back up, which you don't like to do with a quick man coming out of the box, but Sean has learned to just flip the ball over instead of trying to throw the ball through Duran at all times. Best raw range in the game right there, including Tony Fernandez, Ozzie Smith, you name it. He covers the ground better than anybody. I'm not saying he gets to more ground balls because he's still learning.
Garner's at 269, takes a strike at the knees.
A platoon tandem at third last year that drove in 99 runs. Dennis Walling, the left-handed hitter, and Phil Garner. Only Schmidt drove in more at third base in the National League last year. While we have a chance, Bob, Dennis Walling is not here today. His mom passed away last night. He went back to New Jersey. We want to pass our condolences along to the Walling family, and we're really saddened by it.
Moyer makes a good play. And both teams go out in order in the first. We'll return to the Astrodome. The first half of an NBC doubleheader. Orioles and Angels coming up later. Back in a minute. Leon Durham, to start it in the second, takes a strike. He's off to the best start of his career at .315 with 10 home runs. But despite the 10 homers, he has but 16 RBIs. Dawson's been knocking everybody home ahead of him. Curveball outside. 2-1. Ryan went past Walter Johnson, of course, several years ago and became the all-time record holder for strikeouts. Consider this. The Big Train's record was 3,508 strikeouts. Look where Ryan is now. And, of course, Carlton and Seaver subsequently passed Johnson. 2-2. So unless he's hurt, Ryan figures to retire with more than 1,000 strikeouts above the total of the guy whose record he broke.
You look at those three, and of course, Jerry Koosman doesn't have the strikeouts, but he had such great longevity. Started with the Mets staff.
The 2-2. And it's lined into center for a base hit. So he was a pitch away from his 4th straight strikeout, and Durham opens the second with a single instead.
Show you a sequence from inning number 1. A couple of strikes on Sandberg. Fastball that sails. Mumphrey steps in. Up and in fastball about 95. And then Dawson, off to a kind of freaky looking pitch. Sinker down and in. Call it a change. Call it whatever you want. But he struck out the side in the first, and there with a sequence of final pitches. I'm trying to mention Koosman, the same kind of delivery all those guys had. Great lower body action, taking the strain off their iron. They call them drop and drive pitches.
Moreland puts it between Garner and the line. Durham is on his way to third. Moreland trying for the double, and he's in there.
Moreland has been in pretty much, as Sean Dunston has, a early season slump. But Billy Williams, the hitting instructor, said Moreland has started putting the ball in play harder. He's had bad luck the last few days, and it's just a matter of time. And with Ryan pitching and throwing hard, Garner was playing well off the line for Moreland, who isn't basically a pull hitter. But he got a pitch up and in that he was able to get the barrel out, get the hips open, and hit in the left field corner. With a Ryan, you will bunch the outfield a little bit more in the infield because they don't pull him too much.
Dunston struggling at 183, showing some signs of life. Hops this one back, and it's out of play. He went the entire month of April without an RBI. Hit 17 home runs last year. That one homer he has this season came Wednesday against the Dodgers' Alejandro Pena.
Dunston, of course, the guy Jimmy Fry, former Cubs manager, now a broadcaster for them, wanted to ultimately move into the leadoff spot. He tried him there. Now Gene Michael has Sandberg in that spot. He would like to have David Martinez, I think, before it's over with the glasses. Herm Strett, the pitching coach, and Gene Michael, the former Yankee manager and executive. Ryan, the first pitch to Dunston, reached back and got a 95-mile-an-hour fastball out of the stretch, as Don Scala tells us from downstairs.
Second and third, nobody out. The infield, of course, is back. They'll concede the run at this stage with no score in the top half of the second.
Except for the corners, because with Ryan pitching and the way Houston is having difficulty scoring runs, they figure in this dome a low-scoring game, so they're going to cheat in at the corners and come home if they can.
One and two.
Well, you watch Dunston over a series of 4 bats in the ball game, and how many times have we seen the Cubs? About a half a dozen games maybe this year. He will swing at so many bad pitches. Already 3 pitches from Ryan. 2 of them have been balls that he has swung at, and he's in the hole. He gets himself out. You just can't get him to be disciplined. He's a very high-strung kid and very aggressive with the glove and with the bat. After Hatcher got hit yesterday, Danny Darren of Houston threw 2 pitches very close to Sean Dunston. Remember a few weeks ago when they put the Dunston rule in, he charged the mound. Harvey let him stay in the ballgame. The edict came out to the umpires. Next time the guy charges the mound, he's automatically ejected.
Ashby hangs out the sign, and Ryan comes home 1 and 2. Breaking ball, and Dunston didn't commit himself.
And what they appeal down to the first base umpire, Joe West, gives the safe sign. Old country western Joe West. He's right back in his element here down in Texas, isn't he?
I wonder how. Well, that first album of his, Blue Cowboy, I guess did all right. spun him away, and the count is full. They check again with West. No, did not go.
One thing about a power pitcher like Nolan Ryan, and there are exceptions to the rule. I'll show you the last pitch. Out of the stretch, there are many power pitchers, when they shorten their delivery, drop down 4, 5, 6 miles per hour. That pitch was as hard as any he's thrown from the windup. He's still in the mid-90s, and reaching back, he still has that quota of pitches of around 100 and 120 imposed by Lanier last year. He's got a bad elbow, not many ligaments in there.
And it bears repeating. We're talking about 96, 97 at times. The man is 40. There's his 4th strikeout. He has struck out 10 or more in a game 164 times in his career. But here's a stat you hear less frequently, and I think it's even more amazing. He's had 15 or more strikeouts in a game 21 times.
There was a time when Billy Connors, who was the Cubs pitching coach now at Seattle, when he was a roving minor league pitching coach for the Mets, the edict came down from upstairs that everybody will tailor deliveries in the minor leagues after Ryan Seaver and Jerry Kuzma. They tried it with a lot of kids. They may have ruined some kids trying to do it.
Sundberg bounces it to short. That'll bring a run home, but Moreland is caught between second and third. Let's see if Sundberg can advance. He can't.
Good base running by Durham with the infield back. He waited to make sure it wasn't hit at the first baseman or third baseman. Not very good base running by Keith Moreland. As the ball to the left side, he violates one of the cardinal rules of the game. He was watching the runner ahead of him, which you should do so you don't run him down. But in this kind of play, unless you're Eric Davis, or Bo Jackson, or Willie Wilson, or Vince Coleman, you're not going to make this. And I don't think they could have made it, so it's not good base running by Keith.
So it's a fielder's choice, 6-5-6, and an RBI for Sundberg. That brings up Dave Martinez. Good defensive outfielder.
He and Denier have been platooning in center field, and Martinez is getting a little bit sure with the bat at all time. Look how much he's choked up off Nolan Ryan.
And he hits it softly into right. It drops in for a hit. Now the move by Moreland in going from second to third looms larger, although Keith doesn't have great speed, and it is not guaranteed that he would have scored on that hit.
Now, especially with a guy who they weren't playing very deeply, choked up on the artificial surface, where not only does it get more quickly to the outfielder, it bounds up so he can get in position to throw. And when they make the throw on the turf, it's very true. Unlike dirt and grass when you throw from the outfield.
And here's the highlight of Jamie Moyer's day. Kid, grab a stick and go face Nolan Ryan. You can help yourself here. Actually, it appears he's not such a bad hitter. He's 3 for 12 this year.
The Cubs have had some big home run days with the wind blowing in at Wrigley Field, but basically they've been doing it and staying in contention and staying at the top with pitching and a vastly improved defense and that base running speed that's been injected into the lineup by Dallas Green and by Gene Michael. A lot of those home runs you just saw in that graphic came with the wind blowing in at Wrigley Field. I mean, they're just cutting the ball right through that stiff breeze.
The Cubs are doing a lot of things right. They've got 48 homers as a team, and only Cincinnati with 50 has more in the league. And yet Cub pitchers have allowed just 22 homers. That's the lowest yield in the league. That's in there for a strike. The Cubs also, surprisingly, have the best stolen base ratio, not the highest total, but the best stolen base ratio on 36 of 41. That's 88% in the entire league. So they're combining power with speed. This isn't what Ryan had in mind. Behind Moyer, 3-1.
A lot of that stolen base ratio, they've been caught less than any other team in the National League, comes from Gene Michael with help from his bench coaches, Johnny Oates, who studies the catchers, John Vukovich, timing pitchers, timing the release point. Rick Sutcliffe, a different kind of pitcher this year, using all his pitches, although not throwing as hard as 84. But Gene Michael, with all that help from his bench coaches, picking the catchers and the right pitches to run his guys out. Plus, with the addition of a lot more speed than last year.
2 on, 2 out on a 3-1 pitch. He walked it.
Whoa.
So the bases are loaded now for Sandberg.
Cavalier pops Max. Pitch for the St. Louis Cardinals. They're in the 40s, I guess, late 30s. One of those, the baseball team jumped to the Mexican League. They were throwing piles of monies to get major league players down there. We tell stories about guys like Stan Musial, where guys came up with 45s to his hotel room on the road and threw $100,000 cash on the bed and said, "Stan, come on down and play in Mexico." Stash turned it down. Max Lear went down there.
The Cubs have 2 singles, a double, and a walk against Ryan in this inning.
I don't think he feels comfortable in the leadoff spot. Been there about a week now. He's hit second a good part of this year. He hit third under Jimmy Fry when he was hitting more home runs and driving the ball more. Ideally, Gene Michael would like to have him second or third in the lineup, but possibly second in front of Andre Dawson.
We saw Sandberg's heroics against Suter in that famous game of a few years ago on our opening. The 0-1 down low, and I asked him if he still hears about that game. He says, "Heck, people remind me of it every day." And he says, "And I think of it every day."
He won McGee for the cycle, didn't he?
Yeah.
He had 2 home runs off Suter. He hit one.
2 home runs off Suter, each to tie it. 1 in the 9th, 1 in the 10th. He had 5 hits. The Cubs won it in 11, 12-11, and that was the game that marked Sandberg as an MVP candidate. That's where he emerged because it was on national TV. He emerged as a full-fledged star. Softly into right field. Here's Bass. It could have been a whole lot worse for Nolan Ryan. 3 hits and a walk. They leave the bases loaded and score only 1. Jamie Moyer back to work in the last half of the second. His last time out Sunday at San Diego lasted only 4 1/3, gave up 6 runs and 9 hits, and eventually the Padres pounded the Cubs 14-2. That made Moyer 2-3 for the season, but one of those 2 victories was a near no-hitter on April 13th in Philadelphia.
We talked about Ryan's great fastball, still in the 90s at times. It's relative. With that great changeup, his 85-mile-an-hour fastball, there's a great curveball, working a little bit of a slider, but with that great change to a hitter anyway, 85 miles an hour fastball looks like it's 95 when you're sitting on that changeup that he throws any time in the count. 3-2 even. There it is.
And he's the kind of pitcher that can give Glenn Davis a little trouble. The book on Davis, certainly don't challenge him with fastballs. You try and keep him off balance with a variety of off-speed pitches. Slow start for a guy who was an MVP candidate a year ago, hit better than 30 homers. Then he came up with the fastball after setting it up with a couple of off-speed pitches to start.
The two key guys in this lineup are not hitting. The guy who's got the thunder right there should hit the home runs, 30 home run potential. And Doran, who sets it up, should have a good on-base percentage. They're both in the 220s. There's
Another
the fastball. It's by him because he's got that pitch that anytime a pitcher's got a pitch that can embarrass you, whether it's a knuckleball, the split-fingered fastball, or the great change he's got, it is always in the back of your mind because you can get embarrassed and swing it when it bounces. And look at how the fastball inside, which Starrett wants him to do, get the ball inside with your fastballs. Don't be afraid. He's all tied up. The changeup's on his mind.
Just missed outside. The toy cannon, Jim Wynn, referred to on that graphic. Here's Dunston to his left, and he got him. Moyer threw the changeup on 2-2, and that's something that Herm Starrett wants him to do. In fact, wants all of his pitchers to do. He felt that perhaps last year and the year before, and this is no knock on Billy Connors, who is an outstanding pitching coach himself, but perhaps when it got to 2-2, 3-2, pitcher decision situation, the pitchers were going to the fastball too often. He wants them to throw the breaking stuff and the change if they have it, and if it's an effective pitch, at any point on the count.
Well, you heard Gene Michael allude to that with Bill McAtee on the pregame show, saying we've changed our pitching philosophy a little bit, and that's what Gene was talking about. Remember, Billy Connors did help set this pitching staff up, but those two guys, Starrett and Gene Michael, have decided pitchers have got to come out from the first inning and use all 3 or 4 of their pitches, including Sutcliffe, not just try and power people away, not give them fastball all the time on 3-1, 3-2. Put another thought in hitters' minds.
Quickly 0-2 to the switch-hitting Kevin Bass, who's at .313. He's more of a power threat from this side, right-handed. And a pop-up on the infield, either Dunston or Moreland. Sean wants it. 2 gone in the second.
One thing you want with a pitcher like Jamie Moore with that great change is a good, strong left side of the diamond defensively. It's like Whitey Herzog with the Cardinals, when you got Tudor and McGrain or Matthews who was sent down, or any of the left-handers. You want good defense on the left side. You stack the lineup with right-handed hitters, off-speed or sinker ball pitchers. You're going to get a lot of ground balls there.
The fine veteran Jose Cruz, for years the number 3 hitter. That was a given in this lineup. Lanier put him in the 6th slot about midway through last season, and he stuck with him there. 2 out, nobody on. Cubs lead it 1-0 as the Astros bat in the last half of the second. Three and 0. Wait a minute. Bob Engel down at third said he committed himself. I don't agree with that.
Well, it depends if you look at the body or the bat.
Let's see. Ah, come on. Oh, wait a minute.
Okay, now, wait a minute, what?
Okay, as the replay continued, it looked like he might have brought the bat through.
The thing about that,
I apologize.
The hips in that brought the bat through. Even though he didn't swing, it was a check swing, but the bat did cross the plane of the plate.
There's a little flare that Moreland goes back and catches. So Moyer has set down 6 straight hitters, and the replay proved Bob Engel at least arguably correct.
Oh. Sometimes the pitching coach keeps a little golf counter to keep track of how many pitches a pitcher's thrown. That is not what Gene Michael, the manager, has. He looks like he has a stopwatch and is probably timing the delivery of Nolan Ryan. Not the speed of the pitch, but out of the stretch, how long it takes him from his first move to unload till it hits the catcher's glove. If you're a pitcher in your first move and you got about 1.50, if you're that or above, you're too slow, and he wants to steal on you. And that's interesting because, if you get a catcher who, when it hits his glove till the throw reaches second base, if that's 2, it's a total of 3.50 seconds. You're not going to catch the Colemans and some of the good base stealers, or the Dorans, or Eric Davis. It's interesting that Gene is doing that, Bob, because he is picking pitches to run on and catchers to run on, and perhaps that's one of the reasons they're so successful in stealing this year. He's doing it himself.
It's always been pretty easy to run on Ryan, hasn't it?
Yeah, with that high leg kick. Of course, you run on Ryan, and Nolan has this habit, if you try and embarrass him, of letting a fastball get away from him a little bit the next time up. So you got to bat against him again.
There's that story Lou Brock tells about Sandy Koufax.
Yeah.
And, Sandy had such an even disposition. He couldn't bring himself to throw at hitters, even to keep them loose, in contrast to his teammate Don Drysdale. But Brock had so bedeviled Koufax on the bases, another foul off Mumphrey's bat, that Sandy looked over to him after throwing to first, which was something Sandy didn't like to do very much. He wouldn't try to pick you off, but after throwing over there about 6 or 7 times, finally Sandy just looked at him and said, "Just wait." And Lou was on the seat of his pants the next time he came up. Did he go? Yes. Mumphrey is a strikeout victim for the second time, and it's number 5 for Nolan Ryan today.
That's a pitch similar to the one that he struck out Andre Dawson to finish off the first inning. He calls it that circle change. Some say, oh, it's a little sinker ball, fastball he turns over. Some say that's the pitch that is getting the action, sinker ball action, that he is scuffing. Billy Williams, he's going to the Hall of Fame this year. Dawson struck out to end the first.
And he drives this one toward the gap in left center, and Hatcher can't cut it off. Dawson on his way to second. He'll stop there with a one-out double.
Interesting conversation with both Billy Williams and Gene Michael that Bob and I had before the ball game last night. They were talking about your pal, and we'll make the Mickey Mantle honorary mention so far. They were saying that Dawson hits that high pitch exactly the way Mantle did. Somehow he gets the barrel of the bat above the ball, and the ball seems to take off into the gaps. Of course, Mickey was more of a pull hitter. That's just what Andre Dawson did. Billy Williams emphasized it. Try and get on top of that high pitch. Don't uppercut it.
That's what Mickey did right-handed, where he was the good high ball hitter. Left-handed, different story.
You've got to watch Dawson at second base off Ryan. Try and get down to third base with a steal, even though there's a left-handed hitter up, even though there's one out.
Durham had a single his first time. Scored the game's only run. Ball one low.
Ryan knows he's got first base open with Moreland and then Dunston and Sundberg up behind him. So he isn't going to give a hot Leon Durham a whole lot to handle. Not much protection at this point behind Durham with Moreland slumping.
Good curveball for a strike.
Bull is a little bit more relaxed this year. I mean, he's getting the bat through the hitting area a lot better. He's pulling more home runs than he's ever hit in his life. He used to hit a lot more left center field.
I saw him crush one into the upper deck in right in early April off Steve Bedrosian of the Phillies at Veterans Stadium. Another curve, another called strike, 1-2. One of the longest home runs I've seen hit in recent years. In fact, he's only the 5th player in history ever to hit one in the upper deck in right field at Veterans Stadium. Ryan is fan 5. This is a 1-2 pitch. And Durham stays alive. Last year, Ryan was on the disabled list twice with elbow difficulties. And eventually, as you said, Tony, Lanier imposed the 100-pitch limit. Dr. Frank Jobe out in Los Angeles suggested off-season surgery, and Ryan declined.
The Tommy John operation, where they transplant either the tendon or the left elbow, sometimes from the calf near the Achilles tendon area, to the right elbow. Gary LaValle just had that surgery done. Nolan didn't want to do it. He's just said he feels like pitching with pain, and he's in extreme pain, they tell him, most of the times when he pitches. He's going. There it is.
Here's Cruz in left. Dawson at first didn't pick the ball up, but he has enough time to get back to second base.
A very unusual count to run a 1-2 strikes, but with 2 strikes, Dickie Thon, the shortstop, have moved more to left field. So Andre tried to surprise Ryan. What he perhaps did was surprise Leon Durham, who had a weak swing on a pitch that ran away and down. Phil Gardner, the third baseman, tries to decoy Dawson. That's from his old middle of the infield days when he played second base. Phil Gardner tried to get him to slide and double him off, but Dawson didn't fall for it. He was helped out by his third base coach.
Moreland had a double down the left field line his first time up. Came in hitting just a .187. And it gets away from Ashby. Dawson to third, and he'll stop there.
Those are the kind of pitches where either a catcher gets crossed up. Now, if a pitcher is doctoring the baseball, these are all alleged accusations. He's starting to sway outside for a breaking ball. Curveball, and it was a cross-up. That's what it was that time. Started to say if there is a doctored pitch, the catcher wants a signal from the pitcher, so he knows that it's going to be a pitch that's going to do something erratic. Whitey Ford would signal something to Yogi that, watch it, Yogi, something's coming, or to Ellie Howard. Ashby wants to know, too, if they're doctoring the pitches. You've got to be careful, you know. Mr. Giamatti putting the clamps on said he runs all these illegal things out of the game, the new National League president.
And you heard what Mike Scott said. To him, the only difference between Chub Feeney and Abe Bartlett Giamatti is that Giamatti's signature is longer on the baseball. Scott just staunchly refuses to add fuel to the fire, makes no comment. Says let others say whatever they want to say. 2-0.
Ryan just took a look over to the on-deck circle. 2-0. He sees Sean Dunston, who's hitting a mere 183. He looked at him, sees it's 2-0. Moreland is starting to swing the bat better. He's got a double in the left field corner already, so I would think maybe breaking ball. Fastball, you gave him a pitch to hit.
Thon, a long throw, but Moreland is a slow runner, and he's got it. So Dawson's one-out double is wasted, and we'll be back. Remember when Kurt Bavacqua was on the pregame show with Marv Albert last year? He gave us a little clinic on how it's done. How much of a difference does that make? There's Scott, meanwhile.
I can remember talking to Pee Wee Reese, who I believe now is still a consultant for Hillerich and Bradsby, Louisville Sluggers, and he said, we've tested. The ball doesn't fly any farther off the cork bat. Just remember Greg Nettles one time put super balls on the inside and they flew out in Detroit after he did a home run the time before.
That's where the evidence is a little bit stronger than circumstantial. The super balls were bouncing all over the first base line. Ashby sends one through the middle for a base hit. By the way, on that pitch that got away from Ashby in the last inning, the ruling was pass ball, not wild pitch against Ryan.
Jamie Moore is an outstanding fielder, as is Maddox, the other young right-hander. In fact, every day before a ball game, Frank Lucchese, now the eye in the sky and former Major League manager, hits these two guys pepper, and they play little games from spring training on. How many they can catch in a row to improve their fielding and their quickness. You see where Lucchese got thrown out of upstairs, where there was a TV monitor the other day here? Thought he might be up here to steal pitches and relay them down to the dugout.
For Dickie Thon, this is just his 5th at-bat since being reactivated on May 8th. You know he had trouble with his vision and with his confidence again in spring training. They set him down at Tucson, and what happens there? He's hit on the top of the helmet by a pitch there and misses 3 days. He's 1 for 4 since his return. Hits this one in the air to left. Back goes Mumphrey, and he's got it.
This is still one ballpark where the balls do not carry. They have moved the fences in. Something about indoors. The ball looked like it was going to go, and then it just died. When Jimmy Wynn played here, the toy can't hit all those home runs. There were some monstrous home runs. Now the fence is in considerably, probably 10 or 12 feet. You used to have to hit them in those seats. Now it's shortened a lot. Still a tough park to get the ball out of.
Ryan shows the bunt and takes a ball. He's 1 for 15, but that one hit was a 3-run homer in Atlanta, the 2nd of his career. Of course, for many years with the Angels, as Dennis Menke flashes the signs, Ryan never got a chance to hit in the DH league. Gets the bunt down out in front of the plate. Sundberg gets him at first.
For a lot of years, they had a fellow here. When Bill Verdon managed here, they had a fellow named Buddy Mick, who was the manager of, I believe, Mickey Mantle and Bill Verdon when they broke in Missouri. And he taught bunting. That's all he did every spring training. A lot of the techniques have carried over to his pitching staff, and usually they're one of the best bunting teams in the league. And Hal Lanier has picked that up and emphasizes and re-emphasizes bunting, advancing runners. And it's a beauty on this artificial surface with Moreland charging like he was. And like Moyer can field, he had to deaden it perfectly, and he did.
And there's Sundberg with the 6 gold gloves, one in the American League to his credit, making the play on the throw to Sandberg covering. Sundberg to Sandberg. Hatcher struck out in the first. Up and in for a ball.
First time up, he did not look with that injured left hand like he was swinging the bat that well.
Pokes this one into left. It'll drop for a hit. Ashby being waved home. Here comes Mumphrey's throw. Offline. And we've got a tie game.
A changeup from Jamie Moyer that was up in the strike zone, hit off the end of the bat, so it didn't have a lot of velocity getting out to Jerry Mumphrey. And Jerry more in there for his offense than he is for his defense. And even at that, if the ball is on line, he might have had a chance. We had a catcher running in Alan Ashby, so he wasn't getting a good jump or running too hard, but Mumphrey didn't make the greatest of throws. This guy may be off and moving.
He's stolen 13, been caught only twice. Doran grounded to short in the first inning.
Interesting technique Hatcher has. Watch how he turns his upper body. He will rotate it counterclockwise so that when he starts, he can throw the left arm. Lou Brock used to do this. Throw the left arm and start with his hands, a technique that Jesse Owens talked to Joe Morgan, Lou Brock, Maury Wills about. Getting out of the blocks, the former great sprinter. Start that first step with the arm thrust, and Hatcher's picked that up.
The Cubs' regular catcher, Jody Davis, had the best percentage for throwing out base stealers in the National League a year ago. He caught about 50% of them. This one has popped up. Let's see if it stays in. Dunston over into foul ground, and he makes the catch to retire the side. The point I was going to make, and it didn't come into play here, concerns Sundberg. He'd thrown out only 2 of 15 coming into today. Tony, neither you nor I is a big fan of artificial turf or dome stadiums, but in this situation, if you're going to have big league ball in Houston, you got to have it. Back in the days of the old Houston Colt 45s, before they built this place, they used to sell mosquito spray at the concession stands along with the pop and the hot dogs.
And you want to hear about inflation? When they built this place about 25 years ago, it cost $5 million. They thought that was very expensive at the time. The new turf that Dr. McMullen, the team owner, is talking about putting in is going to cost them $5 million just for the turf. They want to completely encircle it with seats.
Well, you were here for the only game in Astrodome history that's ever been rained out.
Rained in. They had terrific flash floods. The truck almost shorted out outside the stadium. They finally did get it played, but it was about a 2-hour delay, as I recall. Starting pitcher couldn't get here. He was stuck out in the highway in a typhoon.
1-1 to Dunston, leading off in the fourth. Game tied at 1. The Cubs have 4 hits against Ryan. He struck out 5.
Two of the pitches he has swung at, I believe, are out of the strike zone. We kept track the first time Sean was up. He swung at 2 or 3 bad pitches that time. Billy Williams, the hitting instructor, at the point where he's trying to say, look, I don't want you to lose your aggressiveness, but you've got to be a little more patient.
Strikeout number 6. And Dunston has been a victim twice.
He has not allowed his futility at the plate thus far, Sean Dunston, affect his defensive play. It has just gotten better. He has separated defense and offense. Dr. Kane out here. He's in the rehab program and pitched just once, 3 innings, scoreless. He must be scheduled to pitch again shortly.
I think he might pitch
Tidewater?
today.
Could be.
His second start.
He better get ready because Ojeda's out with a bad elbow. Fernandez hurt his knee yesterday. Don't know how seriously. Roger McDowell is back. He has pitched in the ball game now. That starting staff that was so great last year has been torn apart a little bit.
2-0 pitch to Sundberg. Foul back. Defending world champs who won 108 last year during the regular season are 3 under 500 at 15 and 18. 4.5 behind the Cardinals and Cubs. Cards beat the Reds last night 5-4. In the process, Eric Davis making another astounding catch. Landed hard on his left shoulder. Breaking ball for a strike. 2-2. Nothing broken but a sprained shoulder that may have him out of the lineup for a couple of days. The Reds, who lead in the National League West by a game over San Francisco and 2.5 over Houston, are at St. Louis again tonight. Soto against Conroy.
Did Sundberg ask to have the umpire look at that ball, or was it Nolan Ryan just wanted a different one?
Wrap to second. Doran knocks it down, picks it up, gets it.
They always talk about unknown and underrated players. For years around here, they talked about Cheo. Julio Cruz, who's out in left field. Jose Cruz, rather. He's hit around 300. And now they've talked about Kevin Bass. But another guy that is one of the best in this game. In fact, we've got perhaps two as good as there are in baseball at second base today in Sandberg and the man who just made that play. Billy Doran.
Here's Dave Martinez, who had a soft single to right in the second inning. 2 out, nobody on, top of the fourth. Game tied 1-1.
Both Garner and Davis have moved in tight at the corners in case he tries to get on base, which is not a bad play, because if he bunts and gets on base, you get the pitcher up and you eliminate him from starting off the next inning, the fifth. He may take a few pitches, try and wriggle a walk out of Ryan. I mean, you're always trying to get on base, but especially in this, you might go up there taking a few pitches to get Moyer out of the way in this inning. You have Sandberg leading off the fifth. We'll see if he can do it. Ooh, I think that pitch was given to Nolan Ryan. That looked a little bit low. Is Paul Runge the kind of pitcher's umpire that Pops was? Ed Runge punched out a bunch of people in an all-star game. Manlin Mays out in Anaheim one year. But he was consistent. You knew you had to go up there swinging, I'll tell you that.
Well, it's like a guy like Lee Wire today. Lee is such a big guy. He has a huge strike zone, but it's consistent. You don't hear much criticism from pitchers or hitters. They know at the start of the game that you're going to get that pitch that might be a couple inches off the black, and they accept it. On the inside corner and at the knees, says Runge. Martinez disagrees. Full count. You know, if more umps called him like Wire and maybe like Runge, as we're observing today, you wouldn't have 3-hour ball games every night.
That's what Whitey Herzog and Pete Rose said. If they were hitting, I don't think they would have said that.
Called strike 3. Now, there's an example of a pitch, and I'm not saying it's a bad call as long as it's consistent. But Noli might not get that pitch from every other umpire.
Baseball language changes. The pitchers talk about painting the black, the little outer edge around home plate. And then they talk about the catcher framing the picture. We just saw painting the black by Ryan being framed by Ashby, and Runge punching out the 7th Cubs hitter. Ryan helped him a little bit.
We've talked about all of Ryan's strikeout exploits. In the game where Moyer flirted with the no-hitter in Philadelphia before Samuel led off the 9th with a hit, he had a career-high 12 strikeouts in that game. And as you mentioned, Tony, if he is getting the curveball and that good straight change with a little bit of a screwball action over the plate consistently, then the fastball can become a strikeout pitch for him, because the hitters are sitting on the slow breaking stuff and he can throw the 85, 86 mile-an-hour fastball by him.
Well, I know you're a basketball aficionado. You're familiar with St. Joseph in Philadelphia?
You bet.
That changeup, there's a walk to Garner leading off here. The changeup that Moyer throws was taught to him by the mascot of St. Joseph, the St. Joseph Hawks.
I thought you were going to tell me it was taught to him by the Philly Fanatic.
No, the mascot, Kevin Quirk, happened to be a pitcher in minor league baseball. The Yankee changed before he hurt his arm, and he was an assistant coach there, and Moyer went to that school, and he taught him that circle change, which is now his most effective pitch. The Hawk didn't teach him that he's to flap his arms, to straighten his arms, to be a better pitcher. Moyer didn't pick that up.
Glenn Davis grounded to short his first time. Swing and a miss. Well, Moyer, growing up in the Philadelphia area, says that Steve Carlton and Larry Bowa were his heroes. And in fact, through his days in Little League, high school, college ball, he used to wear number 10, which was Bowa's number with the Phils. Here's the 0-1. Fastball on the inside edge.
They're really trying to jam Davis. One thing Dennis Menke, the hitting instructors, tried to do 2 years ago when Davis came up, to drive the ball to right center field. He hits best when he tries to drive the ball, especially off-speed stuff and breaking ball to right center. When he does that, they're going to jam him inside like Moyer just did.
Down to second, Sandberg whirls, goes to Dunston, on to first, double play. The last time Ryne Sandberg, and you can just pencil him in for the Gold Glove every year in the National League at second base, and that's despite the presence of other good second basemen in the league, the Johnny Rays, the Tommy Hers, and others. The last time he made an error on artificial turf was July of 1985.
July 2nd, that was in the All-Star game here. He's got 73 consecutive games in artificial surface without an error. There's nothing he can do that he can't do. Hit for power, hit for average, take base on ball, steal. You just saw him start the double play. He turns it as well as anybody. That is one area where the defense of the Cubs did not improve. There was no room for improvement with Sandberg. His first full year at second base, coming from third base, he won a Gold Glove.
Want to talk about a shrewd deal?
Oh.
The basis of the deal, at least to the casual fan, back prior to the '82 season, as Bass grounds this one foul, was Ivan DeJesus from the Cubs to the Phillies for Larry Bowen. Dallas Green, who of course was very familiar with the Phillies organization, having managed them to the world title in '80, said, look, you got to throw this kid Sandberg in from down on the farm. You got to put Sandberg in the deal. The Phillies did, much to their regret. Had they not, Sandberg would probably be their second baseman today, and Samuel would be an outfielder. 4 straight Gold Gloves for Sandberg. And there you see, maybe we'll get another shot of it. That's on the outside corner. Look at the edge just over the wrist. The Rawlings Gold Glove.
The players are so proud of those because unlike all-star balloting or other awards that are voted for broadcasters or writers, that is voted on, those Gold Glove awards, by managers and coaches. And they appreciate that sometimes more than something voted by media people.
2-2 to Bass with 2 out, nobody on. Last half of the fourth, 1-1. If you're just joining us, we've got another one to come. Vin and Joe out in Anaheim, Orioles and Angels. Fastball just frozen. I don't know what Bass was thinking, looking for something else, and he couldn't pull the trigger. Looking for the change, he fed him the heat. Back after these messages from your local station.
From our center field camera with the zoom lens behind home plate, behind that radar gun, the little white spot, is Dr. Gene Coleman, who used to train the astronauts for the NASA program here. He now is the physical conditioner, not only for the Astros, but Nolan Ryan. Nolan's had the hamstring pulls and the problems. He has him do things within the swimming pool. He charts every pitch, speed, where it is. It's kind of a taboo place to go. The brass from the Astros doesn't like strangers going down there and looking at that radar gun. Like when J.R. Richards pitched here, they wouldn't let him get the radar readouts because he always tried to throw as hard as Nolan Ryan, and he actually threw softer when he overthrew.
1-1 pitch to Moyer. Of course, the thing about J.R. Richard, in addition to the fastball of 98, sometimes 100, he threw a slider that was better than 90. Ryan has never thrown a slider, which might be part of the secret of his longevity. Still a power pitcher at 40 because the slider puts great strain on the arm. Just ask Dave Steve with that sore elbow.
Another strikeout for Noli, an off-speed pitch of some kind. I am not going to debunk your theory, except I will throw Steve Carlton at you, still pitching for Cleveland, who had a hellacious slider. I will throw Tom Seaver, who threw a slider, and he's still sitting out there able to pitch.
Remember, if
thrown properly, a slider is not bad.
If you rewind the tape, you'll find the word might in my statement, because I am always one who hedges his bets.
Good.
8 strikeouts for Ryan.
Again, the ball was looked at, put back in play by Paul Runge.
Sandberg struck out and fly to right.
You know, one of the things when you throw a hard curve, and of course a slider is a hard pitch, there are very few people or pitchers that can handle both at the same time because of the difference in the mechanics. One a stiff wrist pitch, the slider, one more of a floppy wrist pitch. And sometimes, Whitey Ford was one, he had a great hard curve when he started throwing the slider, taught to him by Johnny Sain. He could only throw the slow curve. And he wanted to throw the slider because he could control it better. Bert Blyland's never thrown a slider either. He tried it. He said he feels a twinge in his elbow, and he's had that longevity too. So in a couple of cases, you're right.
Of course, Blyleven has the curveball that every year players around the league rate as the best.
Well, Mike Witt's in that category now. With California.
There's a fastball fouled off. What is it that Reggie calls Witt's curveball? The Mercedes-Benz, B-E-N-D-S, because as Reggie says, it's top of the line. And Reggie, as a collector of antique cars, what's he got, 40 or 50 of them? He ought to know. Two-two pitch. Full count.
He has thrown that pitch a lot with 2 strikes, whatever it is. But it's the one that has the downward action. He really has never been a pitcher who's tried to throw many sinker balls during his entire career, Nolan Ryan, but he's got something that's sinking now and running into right-handers.
Hit in the air to left and deep. Is this his first homer ever at the Astrodome? Yes. He had never hit one out at this park. And you see Ryan's reaction. A lip reader's delight. The Cubs go in front 2-1.
It looked like a belt-high fastball inside part of the plate. They're pitching him a little differently since Jimmy Fry got him to try and turn on the ball more when he was ahead in the count. 2-0, 3-1. Look at the great bat speed through the ball. You hear so much about bat speed. Well, bat speed's great. When you make contact, your hands are in a good, solid hitting position, and you hit through the ball. And he hit through that son of a gun.
Early this season, Mumphrey was just languishing on the bench.
Herm Starrett, the Cubs pitching coach. Juiced up, got a heart and it's beating. Not a new line, but it's...
Unassisted put out for Davis. That's the second out.
There's Herm. Last season, Gene Mauch's pitching coach Marcel Latzman made a similar quote. Meant about the same thing. He said, I put 2 new baseballs down on the bench, turned away. And when I turned back, 30 seconds later, there were a dozen there. The rabbit ball had multiplied.
Well, the total number of home runs around the major leagues has jumped over the last few years. Here's Dawson. In 1984, the average homers per game in the majors, 1.55. It went to 1.71 the next year, 1.81 last year, and so far this year, up 17% to 2.12 homers per game. When you see Len Cicada, look at this from 84 to 87. That's a jump of 37% in the last 3 years from the 1.55 in 84. When you see Len Cicada hitting 2 home runs, 3-0. When you see Wayne Tollison hitting one to the opposite field last night for the Yankees in Seattle, it does make you wonder.
It does make you wonder about Ryan Sandberg. He's hit that ball very well. Well, I knew it ever since those guys landed on the moon that something freakish was going to happen.
Yeah. Interesting theory.
The athletes are bigger and stronger. They're using lighter bats, better hitting techniques. They can't pitch inside as much, so they can get the arms out and leverage the ball. And with all that, the ball still appears to be a lot livelier, not just a little.
Dawson walks on 4 pitches, and that brings up Durham, who's singled and flied to left.
You know, perhaps with all the testing, and they call that testing method as Lemire looks on, the coefficient of restitution, I guess that's the technical term for the ball rebounding off the bat. But you go to the old line scouts, Hugh Alexander, now with the Cubs, 50 years in baseball this year, Ellis Cleary, Tom Ferrick, they sit behind home plate and they said, starting last year, we've never seen balls in all of our major league experience or minor league experience jump off bats like this.
Swing and a miss and a high hard one.
Observation over the long haul by those guys who have tried and true methods. Good eyesight and good perception of what's going on is still the best way. Take all the measuring devices you want and listen to those guys and they'll tell you what's happening. Bertie Tebbett's another one in baseball about 50 years. They're astounded at what's happening. The balls hit on bad swings by 170-pound weaklings to the opposite field out of the ballpark.
Quickly 0-2. Meanwhile, the folks at Rawlings in St. Louis will tell you that every test indicates there's no difference. So all well within the parameters that the major leagues prescribe, and that this is something that comes up every year, and there are all kinds of factors other than the ball itself to explain it.
Got to watch Andre. You know, they're storing baseballs differently, too. I can remember going to White Sox Park. It was Dawson not getting a big lead with a left-hand hitter up. When Stanky managed there, Al Lopez, Paul Richards, they used to freeze baseballs when they didn't have a big hitting attack. Now they're under controlled temperatures, so they may get livelier when they leave the factory. Stored in good humidity, pitch out.
Pitch out, not going.
So, you know, you had a lot of factors in this. American League especially, with the DH, it's going to go up, and it has. And also, you've got smaller ballparks. John Vukovic, who someday is going to manage. He's ready right now, I think. Gene Michael has really simplified his sign. They were missing too many when he got the club last year.
Durham with a 2-hopper down to Doran, who throws him out. Sandberg's homer gives the Cubs the lead as we go to the last half of the 5th at the Dome. Some of the reasons for the Cubs' success, just percentage points behind the Cardinals in the National League East. Chicago is 20-14. We mentioned the huge difference between their home run totals. Sandberg's was their 49th of the year, while their opponents have hit only 22. Their high percentage of success stealing bases, but the pitching is as important as anything. Last year they were dead last in the league. Cruz leads off here and takes outside. In team ERA at 4.50. You expect some of that because they're pitching at Wrigley, but it doesn't explain it all. This year they've improved by better than a half run a game, at least to this point. And they're also playing very well on the road. Their 14-5 road record is the best in the National League and the best start on the road in the history of the Cubs franchise. They lead here 2-1 as Houston bats in the bottom half of the 5th.
Houston is second in the National League in pitching, that's ERA-wise, and the Cubs are third. And they rank the top 2 teams in fewest errors committed. So the pitching and the defense is going together for these 2 teams.
Three-1 pitch. Cruz has always been a free swinger and a difficult guy to get a book on. Hits left-handers well. Unlike a lot of left-handed hitters who tend to be low ball hitters, he's always been a good high ball hitter. And he'll chase pitches out of the strike zone, which is very, very difficult to get a line on him.
He is tough to defense because he hits the ball to the left field line, and if you change up, he hits down the right field line.
Hits this one softly in the left. Mumphrey is there.
You know, in day baseball in this ballpark, there are still times you can see why Martinez came all the way over from center field to back up Mumphrey. There are still times when the ball gets lost by visiting clubs in the dome. I mean, almost every dome's got a problem like this, but before they painted this, remember this dome originally had grass in it. And then there were so many balls lost in day baseball, they painted it, the grass died, put in the turf. But you can still see on a bright sunny day, it's cloudy out today, how an outfielder could have trouble. Seattle, you have trouble. Minnesota, you have trouble in the dome.
Ashby with a hopper short. Dunston unloads and gets him easily. Well, you know, Kirby Puckett, who is a Gold Glove quality outfielder patrolling center field at the Metrodome, says the key is, and the reason why he's able to make so many catches deep in center going back on the ball, never take your eye off the ball. He says, I don't turn and run to a spot. You can't do it at the Metrodome because if you have to look twice, you'll lose it.
Of course, last year in the Metrodome in Minneapolis, they changed the lighting. They put like an orange lighting in there where the ball is able to be seen a little bit better.
Fon back from Tucson. That AAA outpost also in the news for the Astros this week, and it involves Charlie Kerfeld. 0-2. You know he had trouble in spring training and then in his early outings this season. They sent him back to the minors. Kerfeld was so important in their drive to the National League West title a year ago. And apparently things are getting to Charlie down there. 1-2. He's such a big, likable, fun-loving kid and has a lot of talent, but A couple of days ago, the manager, Bob Didier, went to take him out after he'd given up 3 straight hits, and Kerfeld had a confrontation with him, screaming at him, and then threw the ball into the stands. Is this a fair ball? It is. Sundberg pounces on it and throws Thon out. So Kerfeld was thrown out in Tucson, suspended for 2 days for that outburst. That brings us to another edition of Baseball Remembers. Nolan Ryan getting ready to go back to work in the 6th. We've told you about his strikeout totals and records and the 5 no-hitters. This guy has also thrown 9 career 1-hitters, 18 2-hitters, and 26 3-hitters. Is he a Hall of Famer? I think certainly, because of the records and the impact on the game. After all, it is a Hall of Fame. Underline the word fame. And yet, for his career, he's not that far over 500.
There were times he didn't play with very good ball clubs. He's got 255 major league wins going into today.
And 228 losses.
He has led the league in strikeouts a number of times, led the league in walks a number of times, both leagues, in fact. The thing about Noli, though, is you wonder what he would have done if those 7 years in the American League with the Angels, pitching in the league with a designated hitter. How many more strikeouts would he have had if he'd have been pitching 3 or 4 times a game to pitchers? Would he have added another couple of hundred or more? He has about reached, we think, his allotted number of pitches, and with the Cubs leading by 1 run, Nolan Ryan, the first scheduled hitter in the 6th, so he will be taken out for a pinch hitter, we believe. And Aurelio Lopez out of Mexico with that screwball will probably be the pitcher to replace him. They've got a kid down there now, Dave Meads, a left-hander, somebody didn't have last year, but wiped the Mets out when they just left you. Struck out Strawberry Hernandez to finish the ball game. If they'd have had Dave Meads in Game 6 last year, and Dykstra and Backman and Hernandez and Strawberry were terrorizing, going for the National League pennant, the game might have been changed for World Series time. You don't know.
Jeff Calhoun threw a couple of wild pitches in the 16th inning that let home a couple of runs after the Mets had taken the lead. Moreland lays off, and it didn't appear to matter at the time as the Mets went up by 3, but when the Astros rallied again and scored 2 more in the bottom half and then fell 1 short, it made a difference. The 2-2. Breaking ball, grounded foul again. Interestingly, Lanier, who did a great job last year in his debut season as the Astros manager, never went to Danny Darwin in the playoffs, never went to Jim Deshaies, and got a little bit of criticism for that, which comes with the territory.
And also, unless you're on the bench staring in a guy's eyes, you don't know whether he wants to pitch in certain situations or not. That's the edge the manager has over every media person. When he goes out to the mound and looks in the pitcher's eyes, the pitcher will tell him, or his eyes will, whether he wants to come out or not. When he goes to send a guy in a bullpen and looks him in the eyes, that manager knows. He can read him, and Lanier's had enough experience through Whitey Herzog and his father, Max, to know how to read a pitcher's eyes. Noli's opening it up a little bit. He knows his last inning.
And Moreland hangs in there. Ryan has fanned 8. He trails 2-1 as the Cubs bat here in the 6th.
You know, the flip side of that thing with the DH when he was with California, we talked about him pitching the pitchers, and the plus that allowed him to do, it allowed him to stay in ball games longer with the DH. They weren't pinch hitting for him like they will in this situation. In the American League, he'd have finished this ball game if the score stayed the same. It's 9 hitters with the DH. So he did get more innings, which allowed him to strike out more. So that's how it balances out that, you know, not pitching against pitchers for those 6-7 years.
Check this out. Between 1972 and 1977, he struck out over 300 hitters 5 times in 6 years in a DH league. In the air to left, back goes Cruz. Moreland got under it, and shy of the track, Cheo makes the catch.
That's the high fastball that just a few years back, I don't care if you're a great high ball hitter, you had no chance with Nolan Ryan. Up there at 99 or 100 miles an hour, you swung at it, you were gone. Now you can at times get your bat at it, as Moreland just did.
Dunston has been overmatched and struck out twice. 1 out in the 6th. Curveball in there. And look at Dunstan's reaction.
He genuflected like he was in church. That'll scare the daylights out of you.
Watch him.
He dropped down just a little bit, Nolan Ryan. First time in this ball game that he went to low three-quarters delivery. Now there's one from over the top. You know, we've talked about Dr. Gene Coleman from the Nassau program, and you see it every time we show that center field camera. He's in the back at field level. He went to a computer expert who tested the lower body strength of Nolan Ryan. And then they did a computer printout and these stick figures. There's a technical term for it. They'd also tested Olympic athletes. They'd also tested Herschel Walker football players, a lot of football players professionally and collegiately. And of everyone tested for the lower body, Nolan Ryan had the greatest lower body strength. And that's where he generates all that thrust toward home plate with a drop and drive, and has had the longevity. Like Seaver and Kuzman and Carlton and pitchers of that ilk.
At the knees, called strike 3. Third time Dunston has gone down on strikes. 9 for the game for the Ryan Express.
I wonder how hard the big train Walter Johnson really threw. Nobody really knows. There weren't sophisticated timing devices. I don't recall. I guess he pitched when he was 40 or over. But I don't think he maintained this kind of velocity at 40 years of age, nor anybody, as you said earlier.
Sundberg fouls it out of play. You know, Ryan is really not an avid baseball fan. Unlike a guy like Pete Rose, every record he approached, Pete knew everything about it, knew the whole career history of the player involved. Ryan didn't even know who Walter Johnson was. As he began to approach Johnson's record, someone finally came up to him and opened Johnson's page in the baseball encyclopedia for Nolan Ryan. And that was the first that he ever heard of the great Senators pitcher.
What did Sandy pitch? 4 no-hitters?
In consecutive years, topped by a perfect
you're talking about a guy who pitched 20 years. Sandy really had about 7 effective years because there were about 5 years, so he couldn't throw the ball over the plate. And you match Sandy Koufax, and not to demean what this guy's done, but over a short period of time to throw that many no-hitters is also a great achievement.
Curveball grounded down to Garner at third, has trouble with it, but he throws Sundberg out. Have we seen the last of Ryan? He's due to lead off in the bottom half of the inning. Close the book on Nolan Ryan. Jim Pankovitz is going to hit for him in the last half of the 6th, and that's what Noli did today.
You're talking to Jamie Moyer, the Cubs starting pitcher, yesterday. Said, how do you feel about against pitching the future Hall of Famer against him, Nolan Ryan? He said, you know what? So much publicity on him, I'll be overshadowed. It'll be easier on me because everybody will be focusing on Noli and not on me. And we've focused on Noli and forgotten that this kid has faced his 17 batters through 5 innings, 2 over the minimum. He struck out 2, walked 1. And Houston is not hitting at this point. They'll get better as the season progresses, but he's pitching one whale of a ball game. We just keep talking about Noli.
Moyer starts Pankovitz with a fastball for a strike. Pankovitz, a very useful bench player. Can fill in a variety of infield spots. 0-2.
We mentioned Denny Walling not available today, home because of his mom's death, but they did make a move yesterday. Paul Householder, the switch hitter, was recalled from Tucson. Sent Ty Waller down, so Householder's on the bench, the switch hitter, if they need him.
This Astros roster is just brimming with switch hitters. Doran, Bass, Bailey, Ashby, Householder. Gives Hal Lanier a lot of maneuverability. Call strike 3. Goodbye, Pankovitz.
The Astros, with Hal Lanier spotting his men nicely, have led the major league in pinch hitting assignments. But not that time to lead off the innings. He busted that fastball, something that Herm Surratt has really had to get to Maddox and Jamie Moyer about. You've got to pitch inside, especially if you want to make your off-speed pitch effective. There's another high changeup, but because it's got more than one dimension. The arm motion never changes. The change of speed helps, and also the change of direction. And when he gets to a good location, it makes it a 4-dimensional pitch.
Moyer knocks it down, finds the handle, and takes care of Hatcher.
You might have seen him flinch. The bat was broken. So many of the people are making a big deal about the home runs flying out, and that is a big indicator of whether the ball is lively or not. But more pitchers are getting hit by line drives. Now, this is a fish shot. Moyer flinches. Give you an example. Mike Birkbeck, a Milwaukee Brewers starter, started 7 times. He's been hit 4 times already. Ken Schramm, Cleveland pitcher, 2 consecutive line drives by him. I've seen about 12 pitchers hit because they can't react to this ball off the bat. Infielders, I think, are making a few more errors because the ball's getting on them more quickly and they're not timing it right. Some balls are eating them up. Indication of a livelier ball? I would think so.
As luck would have it, I'm flying into St. Louis after tonight's game. Any message or pleasantries you want me to pass on to your friends at Rawlings?
Not this year. I mean, the president last year told you, he called me everything. I guess I wasn't the only one saying the ball was livelier, and you stuck up for him because you did not think the ball was livelier. Now I hear you coming out saying,
just wasn't
I really think the ball is juiced up. I don't think anybody's sure.
I was just trying to maintain some semblance of objectivity to balance your diatribes. Here's a 2-1 pitch. 3 balls and a strike to Doran, who's grounded out and fouled out. Walked him.
That's where he's good at setting the table. Even though he's not hitting, he will take the bases on balls and doesn't strike out a whole lot, Billy Doran. And aside from the 3 strikeouts and just the 1 walk, Moyer has 9 ground ball outs, including the double play back in the 4th after a walk. A good man to protect the runner. Phil Garner with a good base stealer on base, although he got caught more than they would like last season, Bill Doran.
This year, Doran has stolen 5. Hasn't taken that many chances. He's been caught once. Ball 1 high. While we get a chance, we'll remind you that we'll be selecting the NBC Miller Lite Player of the Game, as always, at the conclusion of the contest.
Moyer's delivery looks a little bit long to home plate. Once in a while, he'll glide into the pitch. When he does that knee kick, you've got a chance to steal, I believe. But the legacy of Billy Connors now at Seattle, and Storetto's picked it up to try and teach them 3 different ways or so to hold a runner. Step off once in a while, throw over, glide into it instead of really picking up the leg and shorten your stride to home plate. But there's a record pace of balks being called in the National League this year.
Shallow center field. Martinez will have no problem with it. And that does it in the last half of the 6th. So Moyer still has the 2-1 lead, and we're coming right back after these messages from your local station. And a happy 62nd birthday a few days back for Yogi Berra. Pitching coach Les Moss also celebrated his 62nd 2 days later.
I asked Yogi if he's going to take his pension. He said, no. Carmen said, not yet. I said, are you taking your baseball pension? If you're not going to take your Social Security at 60, he said, no. Carmen said, not yet. He said, but I'll tell you one thing Carmen wants me to do. He said, somebody approached me to do a rock video.
No.
He said, Carmen wants me to do it, but I got to take 3 days off. I said, who asked? He said, the Jefferson Starlights.
Jefferson.
That's right. You got it. He said, but I told Carmen I don't think I look good in the earrings. I think they might want me to wear earrings to do the rock video. So he's not doing the Jefferson Starlights.
Or the Jefferson Starship, for that matter.
Right.
I think Yogi's a bit too slick for Grace Slick. Martinez fouls one out of play. Vin and Joe are out in Anaheim. They had a good one there last night. California beat the Orioles in 10 innings, 7-6. Scheduled pitchers Scott McGregor, 1-5 against Mike Witt, 5-2, one of the best in the game. Aurelio Lopez out of the bullpen. Senior Smoke in relief of Nolan Ryan, who worked 6 effective innings. Martinez pokes it in the left, and Cruz gets there.
He was not knowing as an outstanding outfielder when he first came up, but he's worked at it. Still has decent running speed for an older gent. They were not booing, they were yelling Cruz. Brothers, of course, who all played Major League Baseball. Was it Hector or Cirillo? Went to the Japanese leagues. He's not playing there anymore. That's quite a baseball family out of Puerto Rico. They keep finishing Aurelio Lopez off every year, don't they? I mean, he's quit on his own a time or two. His wife threatened him if he didn't go back, she's going to divorce him and whatever else. But he comes out of spring training, has a good spring. He's got a rubber arm, throws that screwball, gets the fastball inside on occasion. It's a good setup man.
Remember when he wanted to quit back in '83? His wife threatened to divorce him, and Lopez was going through the whole deal. He's down in Mexico, and he says, no, I'm not going back. He says, then my wife threatens to divorce me. My parents were going to disown me. My best friend threatens to punch me out, and he's a priest. Here's Thon, and he takes care of Moyer, who wasn't running hard down to first. Now it'll be Sandberg, and the difference in the game, his home run back in the 5th off Nolan Ryan, the first time he's ever homered in this ballpark.
He seems to do things with his legs, stealing base or base running, with his glove, and now with his bat today, if that holds up, that really make him almost a sensational player in a quiet way. And he doesn't have a sensational temperament, but he's got that kind of, again, we use the word presence or charisma that Dawson has. Very quiet, but he does things in key situations to hurt the opposition in a lot of areas.
We mentioned that Sandberg hasn't committed an error on turf since July of '85. He made 5 errors, period, all of last year. 5 errors for the full season.
Well, with two teams whose pitching has been very good in the Dome, the pitcher's ballpark, you expected a close game. Only 7 hits in this ball game. Ashby reminding Lopez to keep the left shoulder in, don't open up and fall off toward first base where the screwball flattens out or the slider flattens out.
Hits softly into center. It's going to drop in front of Hatcher. So Sandberg, who had a tough start to this series, striking out 3 times last night, struck out and flied out his first 2 times up today, bounces back with the homer and then a single.
Well, you've got a breaking ball pitcher with that screwball. Texas born and Texas bred. You know, one of the biggest things down here in the Texas-New Mexico area is not the doctoring of baseballs or the lively ball or cork bats. It's a border dispute as to where Billy the Kid, Bill Bonner, really died. You been reading about that?
No, would you fill me in?
The people in New Mexico said he died a natural death there. People in Texas said that he was killed here by Sheriff Pat Garrick. So they're going to have a cow tossing or cow chip tossing contest to iron that one out between the 2 governors. You got to keep up on this stuff.
Well, not the first time an elected official ever threw that kind of stuff around, in public or private.
Good base stealing situation right here with a left-handed hitter up.
Mumphrey started to mention this earlier and got distracted. Had been languishing on the bench. Had like 5 at-bats through the first 3-4 weeks of the year. He started 5 of the last 6 games now in the outfield. And he's hitting almost 500. He's 0 for 3 today, though.
Well, one of the reasons also he finally got his chance is Brian Dayette, the right-handed hitter with some power, and Chico Walker, the switch hitter, had been platooning out there. But Chico Walker really is struggling with the bat. He's a good base stealer. This guy from the left side is a good hitter, and he's shown it. He doesn't want to give that job back up.
The 1-1. Breaking ball in there.
At this point, John Vukovic, who has simplified the signs. Rubo and Namaro left that place. They've left the hole on the right side open. Let Mumphrey shoot through it with 2 outs. They pitched out. And in this situation, They want Mumphrey to try and get a first and third. Now they may steal 2 and 2, but you've got Dawson sitting in the on-deck circle. And in case Mumphrey gets on, you wanted Dawson to get up. So that may have been Gene Michaels' thinking by not starting the runner. Now you may let him go.
He is going. Mumphrey lays off. High throw. 9 steals in 9 attempts this season for Sandberg.
And what a great pitch to run on. It was a screwball that Ashby had almost scoop out of the dirt. Right off the dirt. Gave that extra step, and with a left-handed hitter throwing over the top. It's not been one of the strong suits of this Astro Ball Club. Throwing runners out. They've got Bobby Wine's son at Tucson, who's got about 30 RBIs, and he's a great thrower. He was up last year, but he struggled a little bit.
And a called strike 3. It's the 3rd time today Mumphrey has gone down on strikes, which brings us to another edition of 7th inning stretch. It took a while, but Billy Williams is going into Cooperstown this summer. Talked to him before the game. He said he's already working on his acceptance speech, and he's very happy about the fact that an old teammate like Ernie Banks is going to show up, and he thinks that several other members of those Cubs teams from the 60s and early 70s will also come to Cooperstown to share the moment with him.
You know,
at
Ron
dinner in Palm
Santo,
Springs, Billy did some time back with Leo DeRocher. And Leo, who's in his 80s now, promised Billy that he would come to Cooperstown for the ceremony. Glenn Davis hammers one, but it's foul. And you could hear that connection all over the park.
Jamie Moyer just got a pitch a little bit too high, or higher than he wanted to, up in the strike zone. The fastball luckily was out of the strike zone inside, so Davis, to hit it hard, had to pull it foul. And that doesn't take long with that happening for Gene Michael to get his bullpen up.
The Astros have only 2 hits against Moyer.
Frank DePino, the left-hander. Ed Lynch, the right-hander. It is not yet one of the best closer in baseball's time, Lee Smith, who pitched yesterday. At
shortstop, Dunston plays it cleanly and throws Davis out. The 2 hits the Astros have against Moyer both came in the 3rd inning. Ashby led off with a single, and a little bit later a bloop single to left by Hatcher was good for an RBI, tied the game at that point 1-1. Sandberg snapped the tie with his homer in the 5th. So here we are, last half of the 7th, 2-1 Chicago, and there's Lee Smith.
He's got 30 saves 3 consecutive years, and they're going to try and cut down his innings pitched to get those saves this year, not bring him in the 7th. There were times last year where the middle relief so bad for this ball club that he had to come in a lot. You look at Dave Smith, who had over 30 saves for the Astros. He pitched his 50-some innings, as I recall. It took Lee Smith 90-some to get equal number of saves.
2-0 to Bass.
Which is probably as difficult a thing as a manager's got to do, to conserve that stopper. Lou Piniella will have to do that with Dave Righetti. He's got more help in his bullpen this year.
As he did last year. Righetti off to a slow start in '87. Righetti got all those saves and really came on primarily after the first couple of months of the season in '86. Speaking of the Yankees, Charlie Hudson won for them again last night. He's 6-0, and Mattingly's snapping out of it. Had a grand slam the other day, had a homer and 5 RBIs last night in Seattle. Moreland backs up and throws Bass out. 2 down in the 7th. Yankees beat the Mariners last night 7-3. So the Yankees lead Toronto by a game in the East. Milwaukee is a game and a half behind, and the Brewers have now lost 9 in a row. They were 20-3. They're now 20-12. I think they're suffering from the bends. They ascended from the depths so fast that
they're suffering a lot from the. Yeah, there's Dave Smith along with Aurelio Lopez. Smith with that great fork ball. But they're suffering from the loss of Paul Molitor, who pulled a hamstring again. And Rob Deere was out. Vergara now's got a bad ankle and bad left knee. Those are key people.
1-1 to Cruz. In the American League West, it's Kansas City by a half game now over both California and Seattle. Minnesota, a game and a half back. Angels coming up against the Orioles. Mike Witt pitching for California in the second half of the doubleheader. A little flare drops in. A 2-out hit for Cruz.
John Vukovich helps Gene Michael because he knows the National League with his Philadelphia Phillies training, and he's kind of a bench coach. Johnny Oates used to be in the bullpen. Now Glenn Brummer's down there. He has his expertise from a catching viewpoint. Gene Michael really has a great array of lieutenants provided to him by Dallas Green to help him out and learn this league.
Just the third hit off Moyer. Ashby has one of those 3 hits. He takes a strike. The Cubs have a new left fielder, Brian Dayette. After Mumphrey made the last out in the 7th, in the top half of the inning, Dayette goes in to replace him and hits in his spot in the order. Tough day for Mumphrey, 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts. Fastball, base hit to left.
Hudson get a trip to the mound, at least a trip, if not a pitching change. They haven't hit a whole lot of balls hard off Jamie Moyer. Maybe 3 or 4. Matt Galante giving some instructions to Ashby at first. Here comes Gene Michael.
Thon is the scheduled hitter. If they go to the right-hander Lynch, they could send up a guy like Craig Reynolds to hit for him and then go in at shortstop.
Well, they've got Terry Poole. Of course, Householder and Bailey, who are switch hitters. It's Paul Householder right there, loosening up his legs and with a bat in his hand. And there's Reynolds. Les Moss with the glasses. Boy, he makes more on a 2-week road trip and meal money than he made his entire first year's salary, which really amazes him. The shotgun is in right field with Andre Dawson, who will terrorize runners trying to score from second base if there's a base hit that way.
Cruz at second, Ashby at first, and a strike to Thon. Thon has flied to left and hit a little nubber in front of the plate, and Sundberg threw him out. One and one. Moyer in his first jam since the 3rd inning. One and two.
Even though Jamie Moyer is tiring and Starrett and Michael know it, the matchup left-handed pitcher Moyer to right-hander Thon is more attractive to Gene Michael now than bringing in a Lynch and having a Terry Poole or maybe a Reynolds come off the bench or a Paul Householder.
And this ball is hammered to left, but Dayette is there. The pitch was up around his chin, and Thon jumped on it. Couldn't have hit it much harder, but in the wrong spot. We'll be back. Through some sort of oversight, Tony Kubek was not invited to participate in the veteran superstars. However, Walt Frazier, Drew Pearson, Joe Torre, and others were. Who will be the best? The answer lies in the stars, the superstars, tomorrow at 4 Eastern, 2 p.m. in Los Angeles on NBC.
Right after our ball game, Lynn Scully, Joe Garagiola take you out to Anaheim, the Big A. The Baltimore Orioles, who lead the major leagues in home runs at this point against Gene Mock's California Angels. Can the Angels hold on without Kirk McCaskill after the elbow surgery? Eddie Murray's starting a little bit now, too. And Ripken's been smoking almost since the beginning of the season.
Remember the homer Dawson hit here while playing for the Expos back in '83 into the upper deck in left field.
Frank LaCourte threw the pitch, didn't he? There were not too many balls hit up there. I believe 6. Jimmy Wynn, Doug Rader's hit one up there, and several others. Andre Dawson, as Bob just told you. Gene Michael wanted to give him at least a day off this weekend on the artificial surface, and Dawson said, I don't want any. My knees feel fine. And so they have an agreement that Dawson will go to Gene Michael when he wants the day off. All Michael said is, I want you to be honest with me.
Lopez ahead of him 0-2, and couldn't get him to chase that one.
What do we get right here? Gene Michael. Yeah, that's been his feeling, too. You bet. They've got an outfielder who can chase the ball down in right field. It has improved right field with Don Andre's acquisition. Not just defensively or with the bat. Gene Michael sees third base improve with Moreland there now. Runge, I think, lost track of the count. Perhaps he did not flip his indicator over, so he went to the, I believe that's what happened, first base umpire Joe West. Usually, at least one other umpire on the bases has an indicator to check the count. That's what Dawson requested.
The curveball is popped up. Davis at first base retires Dawson.
I'll tell you what a change. You get a guy like Nolan Ryan in the mid-90s, then Lopez comes in with a screwball, breaking stuff. You know, the makeup of the Western and Eastern Division of the National League, we're going to have two competitive races. You know, the Mets, if they ever get well and get their defense straightened out, they're obviously going to be there. But it's not going to be 100 wins this year. You know, somebody wins 90 ball games or just above 90 could win this division, and the Cubs might be capable if their middle relief and their starting pitching holds up. Of course, Houston, there could be 3 or 4 teams involved in the West. They've got a good chance because their pitching is so good, and they're going to start hitting, too. Doran and Davis will start hitting.
Here comes a 1-1 pitch to the bull in the dirt. You know, before the owners decided to tighten their belts this year, and they won several arbitration cases where the player actually made less money than he had received the year before. Aurelio Lopez was one of a kind in that regard. Prior to this year, he was the only player in the history of arbitration to emerge with a lower salary than the year before. But obviously, they did not cut his meal money. Which might have been dearest to his heart. Durham grounds it to short. Here's Thon throwing him out. The roar you hear, they got a wave going on Jacket Day at the Astrodome.
Here you watch Dickie Thon field the ball like that, and not only was his hitting bothered by getting hit by Mike Torres in left field, but his defense was bothered a little bit. Balls hit to Dickie Thon's right. He would lose with that blind spot in his left eye. He's got some new exercises that he uses. And one of the things he does, they put a turntable on and put like a record on it. He's got to follow the numbers. And he said it's really strengthened both his left and right eyes. And he's still got the blind spot, but he can now see around it at times.
Ball one in the dirt to Moreland. Remember what they used to say, maybe true, maybe apocryphal, about Ted Williams, that he could read the labels off spinning phonograph records, and that he could read license plates on moving cars.
You know, everybody's got the various theories on the livelier ball, and I think Ted Williams read a comment that he had said, there's not as much of a stigma to hitters striking out. Even Ted Williams, when he got 2 strikes against a lot of pitchers, would choke up on the bat a couple of inches, get more balance from the bat, and put the ball in play. Still trying to hit it hard to put the ball in play. Now guys get 2 strikes. They don't cut their swings down. They're still swinging from their heels. They don't care if they strike out, as evidenced by Deere and Incaviglia last year, and Canseco.
One of the most incredible stats of all time, DiMaggio hit just about the same number of career homers as he had career strikeouts. Think about that. That is just unbelievable. He'd have seasons where he hit 350, 360, hit 35, 40 home runs, and struck out less than 20 times in the whole season. But that was Joe D. Moreland pops it up, looks playable for Ashby. And it is, so Lopez works a 1-2-3 top of the 8th to keep it close. It's still 2-1 Cubs. Someone here at the Astrodome with an unerring sense of what it takes to get himself on the air, knowing that our crew is shameless. Yes, the Orioles and Angels next.
Jim Sundberg. He has moved up to the 5th slot. I believe he just passed Ted Simmons. Look what he's got to go to get Hall of Famer Al Lopez. Bob Boone back in an Angels uniform, so after sitting out, the free agent, he'll be moving up. Rick Farrell, who caught that staff with 4 knuckleballers, and the great Gabby Hartnett.
Sundberg will be 36 on Monday as Mark Bailey, another of those switch hitters on the Astro bench, bats for Lopez to start it here in the last half of the 8th against Moyer. Bailey, a backup catcher who had all kinds of defensive problems. They really became disenchanted with him, sent him back to the minors for a while.
Well, he was rushed up. When Al Rosen was here, they were looking for a catcher. Now, of course, Al, who helped set this ball club up, and now Dick Ragnar makes most of the moves here and he's made some good ones. But they brought Bailey up pretty hurriedly, I think from A-ball, and it may have set him back just a little bit.
Steve Horn up in the booth with us points out that Sundberg, whom we were talking about a moment ago, caught all those years for the Rangers in the heat of Arlington, Texas. Outside 3-1, and that really takes its toll. He won 6 Gold Gloves. He was the premier defensive catcher in baseball for a long time, certainly in the American League, but that probably did take its toll on him. Walked him. Tying run is on. Let's see if they send a runner in for Bailey. Paul Householder just up from the minors as they sent Ty Waller back down to Tucson. Walks, goes in to run for Bailey, who drew a walk.
Gene Michaels saved his pinch runner in case it gets close. He put Dayette in left field, and he saved Chico Walker, the only left-hander he's got available, unless he uses a pitcher. And Sutcliffe is a good hitting pitcher if Gene Michaels would like to do it. But that's who they've got left. Terry Poole and Craig Reynolds.
Of course, the guy he'd like to call upon is on the disabled list in Davy Lopes.
Bad elbow. It's not getting any better. Throwing elbow.
At 40, Lopes can still motor. Still a stolen base threat.
He broke the record last year for stolen bases. Total number for a 40-plus veteran.
Yeah, he stole 24.
Here comes Herm Sturad. Not going to waste any time. They're going to bring in, I believe, Frank DePino. And then we could probably see a double switch in the lineup. Maybe remove an infielder. Change, juxtapose the hitting positions. Was Sturett asking for time from the umpire when he came out, or was he signaling for the pitcher coming in? I thought he raised his left hand to get DePino in. He's not coming in yet. No. I think he just wanted time.
Michael and Starrett showing a lot of confidence in 24-year-old Jamie Moyer.
Well, it's confidence, and they know he's tired of it. It was obvious last inning, but it's also the problems they've had for their setup men for Lee Smith.
And Hatcher lines one into Moreland's glove. No double play as Householder dives back.
And with Keith Moreland playing up in front of the bag in the event he might drop a bunt down, that ball got on him in a hurry. He is wearing a mouthpiece, as you see. And fortunately, that wasn't off the turf or right at his face. Look at how shallow he is. Boy, balls are getting on infielders in a hurry these days, aren't they? I'll tell you, that's one thing he's got. He doesn't have running speed, which is what hurt him in right field. But being a former catcher, he did play third base at the University of Texas, Keith Moreland. The best asset a third baseman can have is not his throwing arm, not speed, but a quick glove. He needs the quickest glove of all.
Boy, that was a blue dart. Householder chased back. Doran's 0 for 2 with a walk. Garner is on deck. Shallow shallow center field. Martinez glides over. That's the second out. Householder returns to first.
Seeing some great reasons out there why this team has played so well on artificial surface. Running speed to cut the gaps down with Dawson and Martinez. And if Chico Walker plays left field, Dayette, pretty good outfielder. You know, they've improved their defense in so many places. They've also improved their catching. Because now Jody Davis, who has been in 150, 148, I mean, over the last 4 years, now they can give him a rest. And Jody Davis may be the best catcher all around the National League right now. Parrish has not established himself. They're running on him in Philadelphia. But with Sundberg able to give him rest, Jody Davis will not burn out in July and August. It was a good move by Dallas Green.
And you're figuring that Carter with the knees and the sore shoulder is not the defensive player he once was.
Pena is hurt now, and of course Pena is still good. I'll tell you, Benito Santiago is still young, but he's great at San Diego. But he doesn't have the experience of a Sundberg.
For 2 with a walk outside. Lee Smith pitched an inning and a third last night in picking up his 11th save of the year in just 12 save opportunities.
Well, if Moyer gets through this 8th inning, you just may see Lee Smith up for the 9th inning in case he gets into trouble. He doesn't want to extend him 2 or 3 innings today.
Here's a little tap. Moyer stumbles a bit but has time, and he gets out of it. So Bailey drew a leadoff walk, but Householder, the pinch runner, got no further than first base. Larry Anderson comes out of the bullpen to try and keep it close for the Astros and give them a chance in the last half of the 9th. You know Anderson's story. Shows up on the field in Philadelphia when a member of the Phillies bullpen wearing the Rastafarian dreadlocks, monster masks, cone heads.
Well, he and Cuffs, Bill Connell, were a real team when they played together in Seattle. Connell now has been signed by the Oakland A's after being released by the Toronto Blue Jays. Anderson and Connell are still very close.
Well, Dunston may not be amused by Anderson, but he's happy to see anybody other than Ryan. He struck out 3 times against Noli.
There's another pitch to Dunston. Foot or 2 out of the strike zone, and he just will not back off and swing only at strikes. Anderson's got that great slider, striking out a lot this year. Many more than 1 per inning pitched.
In comes Hatcher. He started back. Late start, gets in and makes the play.
He's made such a big difference out there in center field. He covers so much ground. He's got a body not quite like Kirby Puckett, but similar. Short and stocky. He just outran it after breaking back. That's what they were looking for when Dick Wagner, the president of the ball club, looking for a leadoff hitter. A guy with speed, could steal bases, could run the ball down in center field in this big dome. And they've got a lot of those together in Hatcher.
The Cubs, as we mentioned, own the National League's best road record at 14-5, but still there's nothing like home cooking. And after tomorrow's game here, they go back to Wrigley against the Reds, and it's special for one important reason. On Tuesday, Harry Carey will be back in the booth. And I'm sure that Harry is watching the Cubs in action today. Our very best to you, Harry. We're glad that you've been able to recuperate in good shape, and we're all looking forward to seeing you and hearing you again.
I'll tell you, I would love to be there on Monday for the press conference. Talking to Joe Goddard, one of the writers. They're going to do a 3-page spread in his newspaper on Harry Carey's comeback. That's how popular that man is. We'll see Harry next time through Chicago, which I think is going to be in a week or so, isn't it?
Yeah, we'll be there next weekend against the Braves.
We'll let Harry treat us to dinner. Take him to one of his hot spots on Rush Street, and he can buy. How's that?
Except you and I better get to bed before Harry is likely to, or we'll be in no shape the next day.
Tell me Harry's lost 35, 40 pounds. Sharp as a tack. Mentally and physically.
Called strike 3, and Sundberg is finished. And Runge has been true to form throughout the day. He has had a liberal strike zone.
Ashby sets up about the middle of the plate, and he hits the outer edge right about at the knees. Some used to say that was the National League strike. They'll give you the lower pitch. Now with the inside protectors in both leagues, you get that same pitch from almost any umpire. It's a great pitcher's pitch to have. They've taken so much away from the pitchers. They need that pitch. They've really legislated against pitchers over the years.
Martinez, who's 1 for 3, swings and misses. Ron Davis in stereo.
Who has got the ball up to 90 miles an hour now. They said they're trying to get him back on the beat, and they think they're close. Early in the year, when he went into Gene Michael, said, I'm not pitching. Gene said, right now, I don't have confidence in him, but I think they're getting to the point where they're going to have to start using him.
Speaking of Harry Carey, remember that marathon game the Astros and Cubs played at Wrigley last September? Ryan started. Game wound up going 18 innings over 2 days. They had to suspend it because of darkness. Harry saying, take me out to the ball game in the middle of the 7th, and then again in the middle of the 14th. What the heck? It was 7th inning stretch time again. Every 7 innings, you got to take a stretch.
Martinez gets on. We're going to have a pinch hitter. We already got somebody on the on-deck circle for the Cubs.
Breaking ball, bounced foul. It's Jody Davis on deck.
Boy, look at the size of his arms. He's in that weightlifting program. He's been so durable. You know, Dawson helps the whole lineup to the back. And he's going to help Jody Davis just by his presence and by getting on base so much. I think Dallas Green and Gene Michael like to have another left-hand hitter with some power. Aside from Leon Durham on the left sitting next to Andre Dawson, they don't have a lot of left-handed power. Good right-handers can give them a lot of trouble if he's got a good breaking ball.
2-2. Scheduled hitters in the 9th for the Astros. Glenn Davis, Kevin Bass, Jose Cruz. One of the best young minds in the game. Won a division in his first season as a major league manager. He can't be bored, can he?
He's got a great pedigree with his father, Max, pitcher for the Cardinals. When his father jumped to the Mexican League, he pitched a doubleheader one day, won it 1-0 and 2-1.
Doran.
And they passed the hat, and he made more in Mexico than his annual salary when he jumped to the United States.
Moyer may be finished. We'll be back.
John Fierro, the trainer, talking to Jamie Moyer, probably talking about icing the arm down. They also got a chiropractor on the bench, Phil Clausen, who was the guru for Carlton Fisk a couple of years ago out of Chicago. Now he travels with the team. Doesn't use his chiropractic techniques, but he does the physical conditioning of the ball club.
The story here is Davis is all over. Ron Davis is in to pitch. Jody Davis is the new catcher, and he hits in the pitcher's spot while Ron Davis hits 7th, Sundberg's spot. And the leadoff man is Glenn Davis for Houston.
Davis perhaps back in the area where he belongs. He was so good with the Yankees as a setup man for Goose Gossage. When he went to Minnesota, they made him a closer, and he had some effectiveness there for a while. But they've got him back down a little more sidearm for right-handers. He throws across his body, and he can be wicked, and the velocity seems to be coming back. He could be a very important man for this ball club to help save Lee Smith.
Shallow right field. Dawson. This is his first chance of the day. Makes the catch.
Last year in this situation, in the last few years, you would have seen Lee Smith. There wasn't anybody else, but Gene Michael knows over the long haul, along with Herman Sturrett, the pitching coach, they had better groom somebody else that could be an occasional closer, and they hope it's Davis.
This is a very significant game. A game the Cubs might win 2-1 where Lee Smith doesn't even warm up.
And it's significant because if he gets the save, what a confidence builder it will be for that Davis.
Bass lines it up the middle for a base hit.
Those are the people that give him trouble. Left-handed hitters with that sidearm delivery, a flat breaking ball, and a flat fastball that doesn't sink like it once did. He was an original Cub. Davis, they told him that he didn't throw hard enough. Now with the left-hander Jose Cruz, they see Frank DePino, former Astro.
DePino's the guy they sent to Chicago in the deal that brought Davey Lopes over to Houston. And that does it for Ron Davis. So Bass is at first, representing the tying run with 1 out in the last of the 9th. DePino is coming in, and we're coming back. So we just had Ron Davis throwing to Jody Davis with Glenn Davis at the plate. Now it's DePino out of the bullpen, getting ahead of Cruz 0-1. The only thing to match that combination is when Steve Lake was with the Cubs. Could have had Steve Trout on the mound, Steve Lake as the catcher, and Kevin Bass as the hitter. Something fishy about that, to be sure. 0-2.
11th appearance for DePino. He's walking a few more coming in relief, especially left-handed hitters, than Gene Michael would like him to.
Switch hitting catcher Ashby on deck. Just missed. Again, it's significant with Smith having worked last night, an inning and a third. Not only will he not get into this game, apparently, he will not even warm up. And warming up, it's not just getting in the game, but warming up takes its toll over the course of a year. Bounce foul, so Michael's very concerned with that.
Gene Michael has a card along with Herm Starrett. Every time a pitcher gets up, approximates how many times he got up, how many pitches he threw, and he knows he does not want to burn out Lee Smith in May. He's not giving up this game, but he knows if they're going to stay as contenders, they're going to have to develop other people out of that bullpen to close on occasion.
The 1-2. Hit too slowly for the double play. The only chance is at first. And now the tying run is in scoring position in the person of Bass with 2 out.
And Kevin Bass's speed off first base prevented Ryne Sandberg, who's very good at it, and getting the lead runner. He got a good jump off the base. Sandberg couldn't get him at second, so he's in scoring position.
In order to do what Michael is doing here, you have to have the intestinal fortitude to take short-term criticism. He knows that if the Astros score here and the Cubs lose this game eventually, he'll be criticized for not bringing in Smith.
You know who he learned that from? Ralph Houck. Ralph Houck helped get him in manager, as he did with Dick Hauser. And he saw Ralph Houck manage that bullpen up there in Boston and with the Yankees.
You have to see the big picture, look down the road to be a successful manager. That's what Michael's trying to do. Fastball strike.
That's what Herm Starrett has emphasized since day one of spring training Arizona. First pitch strike. First pitch strike. The batter becomes defensive when they're looking for some punch. They've been struggling with the bats.
Ashby has 2 of the Astros' 5 hits, a pair of singles and 3 trips. Out of play, and the Astros are down to their last strike.
You know, Ashby was talking before the game, and I'd be remiss if we went out of this ball game before I said it. He said, wish for the whole team to one of our Houston Astros scouts who had serious surgery yesterday, Jim Fleming, sitting in St. Vincent's Hospital in Staten Island. He said he'll be watching, so wish him the best. So there you are, Jimmy. Get well soon.
Two-1 Cubs, bottom of the 9th. Bass at second. 2 out on the 0-2 pitch. It's Sandberg. And it's over. You couldn't ask for anybody better to handle the last chance in a 1-run game.
Something happened. I think there is interference on this play. The game is not over. I believe there might have been catcher's interference. You betcha. Now, it is not a dead ball. If that had been a base hit, there was the option. They could have taken the base hit if the run had scored. The option now is catcher's interference, E2. Runners on first and second as Bass has to go back, and the runner, Ashby, is on base. So Hal Lanier breathes a slight sigh of relief, and he says, hey, we got another little bit of life because of Jody Davis. See if we can pick it up. The ball's hit very hard. Boy, Runge is not reacting. We could not tell if he slapped the back of Jody Davis' glove, but he must have. So, charge it air to Davis. The inning is still alive for Dickie Fong.
Bass does not advance from second. It's first and second. And ball 1. So Jody Davis, who just came in to catch this half inning, charged with the error on catcher's interference. grazing the bat of Ashby as he sent the grounder to second. Ashby at first, Bass at second. DePino has to get an extra out and gets the called strike at the knees on the inside corner.
We'll see Jody Davis on this. Now, here's a replay of that ground ball out that looked like had ended the game. This is done by sound, folks, rather than by observation. With the ball coming so hard and the bat going, one you had to hear that hit the catcher's glove. There's been a right-hander going in the bullpen, but Gene Michaels going to have the left-hander pitch for Thon rather than bring Ed Lynch in to pitch for Terry Poole. There's Lynch. You didn't want Lynch against Poole because that's what you see of Terry Poole, because he's been the most effective pinch hitter in the big leagues this year thus far.
That's out of play on the right side. 2-2. As Red Barber used to say, deuces are wild. 2 balls, 2 strikes, 2 outs, 2 on. 2-1 the score, and Lee Smith a spectator. DePino trying to save it from Moyer. Full count. Now almost certainly any hit to the outfield scores Bass, and an extra base hit might plate Ashby. Only back from Tucson for a week. 0 for 3 today. DePino against his old teammates. Bass and Ashby go. Fly ball center field. Martinez will get back. The Cubs win it. And Jamie Moyer wins his 3rd. They hang the defeat on Nolan Ryan, who's 2-3. Jamie Moyer is 3-3. Sandberg's homer in the 5th off Ryan is the difference. And now, appropriately, on this day filled with Davises, we've alluded to it before, when we come back after this break, we'll have an interview with the Reds' Eric Davis. Stay with us.
Back now in New York, and if you were with us during the pregame, we showed you play from last night in St. Louis when Eric Davis of the Reds went down after a great catch, but you could feel a collective deep breath from the city of Cincinnati as Eric left the game. He just had an examination at the Park Crest Surgical Clinic in Missouri. He's on the phone with us now. Eric, how you doing?
I'm doing fine.
What did the x-rays show?
Well, the x-rays were negative. They didn't show any separation or any broken collarbone or anything like that. The doctor said it's just a bad sprain, and I bruised it pretty bad. So
are you a little sore?
Yeah, with a little sore, but with the right treatment, I should be back in a couple of days.
So only a couple of days. You don't anticipate longer than that?
I hope not. Well, I'm trying to rush it to a couple of days, but you know, the trainer said that we'll just take care of it and then just hopefully just wait for the best.
Eric Davis of the Reds, best of luck. Thanks for being with us. All right. Now let's go back to Houston and Bob Costas. Bob?
Thank you, Bill. And our NBC Miller Lite player of the game is Jamie Moyer. Miller Lite is happy to present a check for $1,000 in his name to the National Multiple Sclerosis Society. Wins his 3rd game of the year today. And the Major League Baseball game of the week has been brought to you by Miller Lite. For great taste, there's only one light beer. By Midas, for mufflers, brakes, and shocks, Midasize. Get it right the first time. By IBM and the new IBM Personal System 2, the next generation in personal computing. And by Liberty Mutual Insurance. America believes in Liberty Mutual. The executive producer of NBC Sports is Michael Weissman. Coordinating producer for our baseball coverage is Harry Coyle. The telecast of today's Game of the Week in Houston was produced by John J. Filippelli. Directed by Andy Rosenberg. Pre-game produced by Les Dennis. Pre-game directed by Doug Grabert. Technical directors John Buckhart and Marilyn Altman. For Tony Kubek and our stat man Steve Horn, I'm Bob Costas. Thanks for joining us from the Astrodome, and now stay tuned for the second half of our doubleheader. Vin and Joe with the Orioles and Angels.